Okay, we are officially live. All right, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Perfect, my friend. Perfect. I hear you perfect. So, welcome everyone to the One Moment Podcast, live with myself, Kevin Odom, and Mr. Ruben Burney. So, oh my gosh, dude, it's not even about, oh my, really? Listen, we have this argument all the time over who looks better, you or I. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I look better than you, my friend. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. Quit trying to pose. All right, listen, all jokes aside and getting into the business here of why we're here. We are the One Moment Podcast. Why are we the One Moment Podcast? There's several reasons of why. And if we look at, what One Moment is, the concept was born out of a rap song. Not even going to lie. Not even going to lie, folks. And it was by Eminem. And he, in his song, think it was Lose Yourself. He talked about one moment, making a decision. Excuse me. Can't even talk today. I apologize. My computer isn't working right now, but at least we're able to work through all of the tech issues, right? But seriously though, concept of one moment comes from Eminem's hit song Lose Yourself, right? But think about, right, because we are a mental health podcast, okay? And so again, why do we call it the One Moment Podcast? Because in every given day, we have, we're given 24 hours, right? Well, within that 24 hours, there's approximately 86,400 seconds. On the average, people stay awake from 9 to about 16 hours per day. Therefore, it is our belief that within every given day, we're given many opportunities to make a decision. People struggle with mental health issues all the time. People struggle with substance use. People struggle with suicidal ideations, suicidal attempts. Uh, you know, we're human, right? Struggle with stress every day. And so if we factor in that there's 86,400 seconds in any given day, and I think Ruben would, maybe agree with this, what is our decision to be in each moment of the day? That's a big question. And so that's why we call it the One Moment Podcast. When Ruben and I got together, we decided to talk about, the name of it. And he liked the name of it. He liked the concept behind it. And so that's why we call it the One Moment Podcast. Just a FYI. Ruben, do you want to say anything on that before we get into the sponsorship?
Well, yes, more or less. I agree with the name. I know it comes from a Eminem song, and I thought that was a perfect name because we only have so many moments to make an impact. And you talk about people struggling. Also, I like to focus on like you said, we're a wellness podcast, mental health, but we're a wellness podcast, and that covers a lot of areas. So I like to look at, people not only struggling, but enjoying life in those moments that we do have and to make each day count. So that's important. For me, definitely important. Being an elder and being in my senior years, it is important to take advantage of those moments because we don't know whether we're young or old, how much time we have left. So to live each day like it is your last.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I definitely would agree with you on that one. All right. We're going to get into our sponsors real quick before we get into talking about what it is that we're bringing to the forefront for everybody today. Mr. Ruben.
Yeah, I love doing this part of the for sponsors. It's Dubby. And if you mention One Moment Podcast, you'll get 10% off their products. The user code is 1moment. And W energy drinks are their description. They say that they don't give you that crash effect that a lot of other energy drinks give you. Like, you take one and within 24 hours, you feel like you're crashing. So they said They come from a whole coffee fruit extract, formerly Nutra Factors, a patent all-natural ingredient derived from the whole fruit of the Coffea arabica coffee plant. It enhances the product of a powerful protein in the brain called derived neurotropic factors. In a clinical study, neurofactors increased BDNF by 143%. And please, you could visit their website and see more about that. But it's supposed to be a very healthy energy drink, and that's W.
And they have new products they just dropped, which we are constantly updating our website. So please check us out on onemoment.chain.box. Again, that website is onemoment.chain.box. Also, give a shout out to our host. Go ahead and tell us about her.
Her name is Sierra Soros. It's found it's the name of the program is The Healing Place. It's in Sanford, North Carolina, founded in Sanford, North Carolina. The place is a growing multi-special mental and substance practice dedicated to facilitating healing and personal development. Our team of compassionate clinicians are committed to provide evidence-based therapeutic interventions tailored to each individual's unique journey. We are passionate about empowering our clients to overcome challenges and achieve emotional wellness. And I can say personally, there was a time when I had opportunity to work with this young lady, and definitely she is passionate about her work, a very compassionate person. And I enjoyed the couple of years that we did work together. And she has, without any questions, allowed us to use her facility when we want to go live. Right now, we're at separate places, but hopefully next week we'll go live. And she allows us, with any questions asked, to use her facility. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to grow and her as well.
Yeah, we are working virtually today just because the weather here in North Carolina. So we don't want to risk our lives or the lives of anyone else. So thank you, Ruben, for that. Next is going to be Miss Patricia Hernandez, Mindfully Me Counseling, PLLC, out of Texas. She is an amazing therapist. She is bilingual. If you are living in the state of Texas, please feel free to, make contact with her. She's been practicing for probably, I always make the joke of she's been practicing for as long as I've been alive. Honestly, I've been knowing her and working with her for the last 3 or 4 years. She has agreed to sponsor the podcast. So again, Miss Patricia Hernandez, Mindfully Me Counseling in the state of Texas. She's working on other licenses too. Now, that being said, organizations we support, WebHash and DNS. Why do we support them? Well, our whole website of One Moment Podcast or onemoment.chain.box is built on domain purchased from 3DNS and a Web3 platform such as WebHash. Both of them are amazing organizations. They are, again, put on Web3 blockchain. And in fact, I've already got them in agreement to help Ruben get his website built. And so they already know that we're going to be purchasing a domain from 3DNS, and we're going to be purchasing the subscription for WebHash. Now, we're going to show you their websites later on during the podcast. So, as we take various breaks throughout the day, throughout the show.
Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And so, again, DNS and WebHash, they are absolutely, again, amazing organizations. If you're looking to build a website based on the blockchain technology, WebHash is, from my understanding, the number one company to do that. Again, it's all blockchain. So, AKA Web3. If you are interested in that, check them out. It's 100 and actually they just bumped the price up. It's 0.3 ETH for a Nerdle NFT for a lifetime subscription. Again, 0.3 ETH, and the domains, again, purchase them through 3DNS, and you get your domains and your websites in the form of an NFT. Anyways, that brings us to, what we're here for. We're here for we're sponsored by several. We support others. Yeah, we're trying to get 3DNS and WebHash to sponsor us too, secretly and not so secretly, but we could talk about them all day, right? We could talk about my mindfully me counseling. We could talk about Miss Ciara, who is an amazing woman, and gracious enough to allow us to use her facility when we meet face to face, which hopefully the goal is to, as long as weather permitting, because we live in North Carolina, we are bipolar weather, right? But the goal is to utilize her office. We're also working on doing a some type of opening, whatever they call it nowadays. I don't even remember.
Open house?
What?
Open house or
Thank you. Open house. I was trying to look for that. My brain just went the other way on me. My mouth is still sore from all this dental work this week. But anyways, all jokes aside, seriously though, she is an amazing woman. She is very gracious and humble. So we're grateful for her. But we can talk about all those things and what brings us here and who supports us and all that. But let's get down to the meat and potatoes of why we are here. Ruben, tell us
why we decided to do a podcast.
No, what's today's topic?
Today's
what
topic
are we talking about today, my friend? That's the important thing, my boy. Listen here, I'm gonna take it like Ricky and Ricky tells the boss. Listen here, my boy.
Okay, today's topic is about addiction and the family, because oftentimes people focus on the actual person who's addicted, and addiction is thought of as a family disease because we know that it does impact the entire family. Not only the person who is struggling with addiction, but the entire family. There's various roles that the family adopts or adapts to in order to survive the insanity. So I think a lot of people out there who listen to this podcast who been raised in a family plagued with addiction can identify with some of the roles that the family members adopt in order to survive the chaos and insanity. So we thought we would talk about that today.
Yeah. And I think it's a great topic. Listen, on a personal note here, I grew up in what mental health calls a dysfunctional home, right? But everything in that home functioned the way it was supposed to function. I had the dad I was supposed to have. I had the mom I was supposed to have. I have the biological father I was supposed to have. I have grandparents I was supposed to have, right? But, everything functioned the way it was supposed to function in that moment. And so, therefore I call it a dysfunctional home. But, why does addiction plague or how does addiction plague families like you were just saying? I think that's important thing to talk about. We can talk about addiction and we can, talk about the people who struggle, right? But, I think it's more critical or more important to even talk about it and really understand what addiction is. And so, when we look at the definition of addiction, we can look at many different definitions, but I think the one that is probably most universally accepted is that it is defined as the chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite harmful consequences, and it can involve both substance use and behavioral addictions. It is often associated with strong physical or psychological need or urge to use a substance or engage in an activity, even if it causes harm. Addiction is considered a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, environments, and life experiences. It can significantly impact a person's physical and mental health, relationships, and career. The term addiction can encompass various types of behaviors and substances, including drugs, alcohol, nicotine, gambling, internet use, and work. It is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use despite adverse consequences. The DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, I think they're actually using a more updated definition, more updated DSM-5. Now, I think it's like the DSM-5 TR or something like that. But the DSM-5 classifies addiction as the most severe stage of substance use disorder due to significant loss of control and the presence of compulsive behaviors despite the desire to stop. Symptoms of addiction can include repeating a behavior even though it interferes with your life, stealing or selling things to provide money for the addictive behavior, and experiencing withdrawal symptoms when the substance or behavior is stopped. Addiction can be influenced, again, by genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. Now, we have various types of treatments for addiction, which can include cognitive behavioral therapy, behavioral modification or behavioral therapy, medication-assisted treatment, and many other types of medical and or clinical treatment modalities. And then you also have self-help. And the most commonly known or widely known is Alcoholics Anonymous. We have Narcotics Anonymous. We have so many other types of.
We have Al-Anon for the family, right?
Yeah,
right.
Al-Anon. There's so many other types. And that's just kind of like the brief underpinning of what addiction is, right? Like there's more to it than just somebody using, right? Like it's a very complex disorder. But Ruben, what are your thoughts?
Like we were saying, we call it the family disease because we know that it, like you said, definitely impacts the family. Oftentimes they talk about transgenerational or intergenerational for as, someone experiencing trauma and the person who's addicted and not being able to work through that trauma. And then that trauma oftentimes, manifests into substance use disorder. And then we see that the way it explains it, that becomes normal sometimes when you're raised in a family where there's addiction, those attitudes and behaviors become normal. And then because they're normalized, oftentimes, unless there's intervention within the family, there's a recovery. Usually those norms and attitudes and all that are handed down to other generations. And that's why you often see that people talk about addiction being genetic, when there's factors in that. I'm not saying that you have a grandfather or a father or somebody that is going to manifest definitely into addiction, but we know there are genetic components that we can't control, like I was saying before, but there's other components. So we know that addiction over time can impact the whole family, and you see it oftentimes. I remember doing a drinking and driver program in New York one time, having the opportunity to do that with another colleague of mine. And we asked the young people in the room, do they believe that as addiction as a disease? And oftentimes a lot of them would say no. And a lot of people don't have to buy into that concept. But I asked them to raise their hands and see how many people actually in their family, whether it's a parent or a brother has addiction. A lot of them in the room raised their hand, and they were there just for basically because the court sent them there. It was an underage drinking program. It was usually like maybe 4 sessions, and then you sign off and you let the judge know that they completed the program. And this was because where I worked at, Long Beach was a beach town. They had a boardwalk. So if maybe an underage person was caught drinking on the boardwalk or something, the court would send them to the program. And I remember over 10 years, a lot of them, they were there, just to meet the court obligations. And a lot of them knew each other from high school. It was a gathering place. And a few of them didn't take it serious. But I see that over the years, those teenagers gradually start to come into actual treatment, like for substance use disorder. I saw that, and a lot of that and they had an opportunity to see that, what happens, over time, that it did manifest because they might have had a family member. And that is a factor that says if you have a family member that, not saying 100%, but there's a chance that over time, you could develop substance use disorder. And we see it in even the program that I work in. You see you see generations, you see grandparents, parents, the adult children, you see that definitely. So you know that there's what they call intergenerational or transgenerational or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, your thoughts, Kevin?
Oh, you just want to throw me on the spot, don't you, bro? Look, I was trying to throw you on the spot since you're a big fan of Claudia Black, but no,
Yeah.
no, I think
Oh, yes.
I do think there's a lot of intergenerational stuff, bonds. Trev, and I hate that Trev isn't able to make it today, but and it's he really speaks a lot on trauma bond, right? But let's look at take that off of it and throw on the addiction bond, right? Or intergenerational trauma, intergenerational, addiction. It doesn't just stop with with one person in the family, right? Now, mind you, because I know, like, personally and professionally, like, I've seen it through families galore, right? Like, family, all types of relationships, from the grandparents all the way to the grandchildren to the children. Like, I've seen it, right? I've seen parents and the children impacted by the substance use or by addiction. And so you're right. In fact, I was reading on earlier, how addiction impacts the families. And it, part of what I was reading was, addiction can can impact the entire support system, right? And there's an actual, and even getting into recovery, right? Like, this isn't just with active addiction. When people come into recovery, families again can be impacted. And if you take a systems, approach to understanding addiction, then you understand, Ruben, and I think you would agree here, when you make one change in one piece of the system, right? There's a domino effect of changes, whether it's an active addiction or whether it's in recovery. And when we look at, some of the family impacts on it, again, recovery and active addiction, there's emotional distress within the family unit. There's financial strain within the family unit. There is increased anxiety
Yes.
problems, increased fear, increased grief and sadness. Depression, loss of job is very common in substance use or addiction. Could be a lot of legal fees, could be a lot of medical needs or medical concerns if there's any type of expenses on that. And depending on the types of drugs that people use, a lot of things like that.
And most definitely, we talk about how it impacts family. Getting to that, there's different roles that the family adopts. They talk about for example, the enabler, the person who is addicted, for example, and then they said the person who they call the enabler, and that's the person. It could be a spouse, a partner, whomever, that takes the role of making everything look normal within the family system. Say, for example, I just use myself. If I have a problem with addiction, I'll just say, for example, my wife might call in and say, Ruby can't come to work today because of this or that. They make excuses. Oftentimes, the person who enables their role is to make everything to fix the problem or to attempt to fix the problem when they actually can't. And
Yeah.
they suffer a lot because they don't have their own identity. Usually the whole family's identity is wrapped up within the person who's using. You have the enabler, and they talk about people like uh, adult children who are of alcoholics or people of drug use disorder. Adult children oftentimes, they have problems as well when they grow up and get into relationships, because if I don't have that role model or that model, good parenting skills, know how to model, body to model that behavior, I guess is what I'm supposed to do. So you'll see that in the family. Adult children of alcoholics or of addiction, I would say, have problems with intimacy, that trust. I mean, if you can't learn to trust, you can't have a intimate, loving relationship. And oftentimes those codependent behaviors develop, because of that. There's so many roles. Just one of them is an enabler.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were reading that, right, and you were telling us about the enabler, I think it's important to understand that, the enabler, this is what it's defined as. A family member who protects the alcoholic or addict from the consequences of their behavior. This role is taken on to reduce the stress, anxiety within the family, but it often perpetuates the addiction by minimizing the consequences of the addict's actions. The enabler may clean up messes caused by the addict, make excuses for them, or shield them from embarrassment or conflict. And then, I always use the term, and, whether, when I'm working with people one-on-one or even in a group setting, right? The concept of conditioning, Ruben. And part of what conditioning is, right, it's a simple term that goes back to Pavlov, right, and the tenets of behavioral therapy, right? We condition ourselves to a way of living, to a way of being in the moment, right? And so we live that way for so long. And so when things change or when things happen, right, like we're so used to living life one particular way or, a certain lifestyle. And so when change happens, right, that's why I said recovery, right? That's a change in that family system. It impacts or it forces change in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, when people get into recovery, there's a part in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I love. There's a chapter in it I love, and I think it really explains addiction and recovery because, you know, if you take a spouse, as you were saying, right, they're always calling in for the husband, they're always doing that, or even vice versa, the husband's calling in for the wife or whatever, whatever your relationship
Partner,
is, right?
yeah.
Parent, child, whatever. Just, bear with me on the examples here. What it talks about that, in recovery, what could happen is that person who the enabler, right, becomes the caretaker eventually, right? Like they're taking care of all of these family stuff, right? They're taking care of the kids, they're paying the bills, they're having to do all these things. And so over time, when somebody gets into recovery, but part of that change is that husband, right? Again, using examples here,
Nuclear family, yeah.
right? Decides, okay, well, now it's time for me to step up and take care of my responsibilities as a husband, as a father, as a man, as whatever that their ideology is, right? Well, the mom or the wife or whoever's been doing it for so long, it just don't work that way, not without communication, not without, making sure that there's an adequate plan of action. Because I've seen it happen so many times professionally where, I will, be working, where I will work with somebody like you were sharing earlier. One of the things I've noticed is once the individual starts building their base of recovery, well, their wife has or their girlfriend has there's a lot of friction there because
Yes.
change has happened. Well,
Yes.
did you talk to your wife? Well, did you talk to your significant other before you decided to do this? Well, no, I didn't. Don't you think that would have probably lessened the restrictions a little bit? So, or, anything of that sort. And, it's through those conversations, of how we can rebuild families in recovery, and not just rebuild families, but rebuild relationships in general.
Plus you talk about whomever, whether it's the husband, wife, partner, however your relationship. If that person's been all that time been lessening the consequences of the addiction and paying the bills and doing all those things, and then the person who's addicted gets in recovery, that's why I said the family goes into recovery, because it's going to be difficult all of a sudden for that person to say, okay, I'm going to hand you over the rings now, and you're going to take care of everything. There's friction because if that was my role for a long time, that's my identity. Now all of a sudden you want to start taking a part in of those responsibilities, and that's where the friction comes in because I'm not ready. Then what do I do? If my role was fixing that person all the time, and then they stop using, okay, what's my role now? What's my identity? My identity was wrapped up in that person now, and now I don't know. All for 10, 12, 15 years, however, I've been, my role is fixing the family. Now, I know I say now the family's fixed because it goes beyond that. It's a lot of work. That's why we say in treatment, we encourage the family to come in, not just the person. A lot of times people think, well, just bring the person who's addicted, who has the substance use disorder, just bring them in. But we know it's important to get the whole family involved. Because there was a approach years ago, and it's changing that, when a person comes in and they have trauma like sexual abuse or whatever, you treat the addiction first and then you treat the underlying trauma. But we know now that there's an integrated approach. You have to treat both. You can't say, well, because when I do an intake sometimes, whether it's a male or female, if they feel comfortable, they'll talk about, I might ask a male, have you experienced trauma like sexual abuse? If they feel comfortable, they'll share that. I'm not going to say, okay, well, we're going to put that on hold. I mean, we're doing an intake, but we're going to put that on hold. And we'll talk about that when you get sober. That's not how it works. You have to take an integrative approach. And that's important, that to work with the family, to get the family to heal.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I remember going through my internship and I think the common traditional way of training is if there's an addiction before the mental health, treat it first. But then if there's a mental health before the addiction, treat the mental health first. And then the addiction will solve whatever. And I'm like, you can't really do that because if they're sitting there smoking crack, IVing heroin, IVing cocaine, methamphetamines, all of that, don't you think you want to treat the substance use regardless of whether there's a mental health or not?
Sure.
And
sure.
so because that's kind of severe right there, right? Like you want to kind of get them sober, right, before you can even talk to them about any recovery or any type of mental health treatment or anything. And so I remember sitting in my internship in practical. This was back in 2019. I was 2019. All of 2019, and I remember, or the summer of 2019, I remember my professor, she was amazing. At first, I didn't like her. I ain't gonna lie, I did not like my professor at that time, but about 4 weeks in, she busted my chops. And I'm gonna tell you right now, man, I grew to love that woman. She was the best. She and another one, both of them. Even if I found their names right now, and I can, I would not ever mention their names on here just due to their anonymity. I want to make sure that they're, but I remember that professor, I'm sitting there, going crazy because I got this other classmate of mine, and there's a severe addiction, and then there's the mental health piece, right? And so the woman's over there trying to, is in the middle of the assessment, doing everything that she's doing on the mental health, refusing to touch the substance use, and she gave her reasons of, but I think the mental health started first and then the substance use, so it was. And I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy. I'm like, oh my God, don't you see the severity? No. But reality is though, Ruben, I think you said it best, man. There's a integrated approach. And so, the approach I take today is less about which one occurred first and more so about what's the best approach that meets this patient where they're at now, right?
Right.
More of the Carl Rogers type approach. And so I understand now.
Patient-centered?
What?
What Carl Rogers, patient-centered? I'm learning.
Person-centered therapy.
Person-centered, yeah.
Yeah, and so now when I look back on that moment, I was just going crazy because my focus is addiction, right? Like, I'm not, I can work with mental health, but when I look at the integrated approach, I get why she did what she did now, because it was the most pressing, the most significant, the most severe in that moment. And then she could work with the addiction, right? But I think it's taking an integrated approach. There's not no one size fits all. Oh, we're going to do the mental health only, then we're going to focus on the addiction. No, I've worked with so many folks, man, that I remember this one person, this one individual I worked with, and well, I tell you what, the resistance, and again, this is why I respect you so much, because of your knowledge, your clinical expertise. There can be a significant problem with resistance with people. And so I remember working with this person, and that resistance was so high, so high. I mean, all I had to do was just ask one question on the clinical assessment, and it just, fire was in the room, right? And I don't mean that, literally. I mean that metaphorically, right? Like fire just lit up the whole room, and I'm like, noted, understood. And I met that person a year later, right? and I'll be doggone complete transformation, complete, all because of taking the integrated approach. I mean, it was just amazing
I
at the
think you have
chance.
to know, like, I'm a certified alcohol and drug counselor. There for 25 years. And most places where I've worked, I clearly state I'm not a mental health counselor. I can diagnose for as addiction. So when somebody comes into our clinic, for example, we're a medication assisted treatment program, and we have certified counselors, licensed counselors. The difference is, a licensed counselor has a master's degree and they went on to do internships. Just well, as a certified person like myself, I had to do 6,000 hours of internship, which I did mostly in New York. But during that time, I learned as a counselor that you definitely have to know, what you can do, but you have to know your limits. When I get a person who, for example, who has substance use disorder, also there's signs of schizophrenia, we do refer them to like another facility like Daymark Recovery. In North Carolina, there's a lot of Daymark centers in different Moore County and Rowan County, different counties. So a lot of times we might refer them to mental health and treat uh, the substance use disorder and the addiction at the same time, as opposed to saying we'll deal with that later. A lot of times I know that, I will refer out knowing that, I'm not a licensed mental health counselor, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's a critical area of, that the public should understand, and not just the public, but also us as professionals, right? Because there's a limit, right? Like, like I don't mind working with addiction, okay? Cocaine use, methamphetamine use, THC use, alcohol use, opiate use. I don't mind working with that. Yes, my mental health license, like as you're, as you were saying, I am licensed. I am a licensed mental health therapist in North
Who are you?
Carolina. I'm also a licensed clinical addiction specialist in North Carolina, and I'm also through the Substance Use Board. I'm a certified clinical supervisor. Right. Long story short, right? I know my mental health license says I can work with schizophrenia, I can work with borderline personality, I can work with personality disorders, and from a therapeutic and clinical perspective. But I'm gonna be honest with you, on a one-on-one basis, like a private practice practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do not. I know my limits. I feel comfortable working with anxiety, depression, things like that. So, like you said, it's about knowing our limits and what we can, not just our scope of practice, right, but our level of competence,
Sure.
right? And I think that's a huge piece in the field that even the public, should understand. And I say should, not that there's a need to understand in the community, but I think it's a should, because we're all, if you go to psychology today, you can look at so many different therapists, right? And what you're going to see is you're going to see child and adolescent therapists, right? On one, you'll see a family and marriage therapist on another. You'll see, a substance use therapist on another, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have all of these different specialties, all of these different, but that's because of people's level of competence. Where do they feel competent at? So real quick, take us over for Dubby.
Okay, we have to do this. Tell who our sponsors are every few minutes, 20 minutes or so. So again, it's Dubby, is Dubby, and they're an energy drink company. And again, what I'm told, I haven't used energy drinks, but I'm told that it's a great product. I can read it. Says it's made of whole coffee fruit extract, formulated from neurofactors, a patented all-natural ingredient derived from the whole fruit of the Arabica coffee plant. It enhances the production of a powerful protein in the brain derived neurotropic factor. In a clinical study, neurofactor increased BDNF by 143%. So you could visit their website and check it out. As far as energy drinks go, from what I'm reading, I understand that they don't give you that crash effect, so which is good.
Yeah. No, I definitely would agree, for sure. No, and that's why I support Dubby, because of they have the natural ingredients. Go ahead and talk about our one of our sponsors, Mindfully Me Counseling in the state of Texas. Patricia Hernandez. Again, she is bilingual. She works a lot with anxiety, trauma, PTSD, depression. She does a lot as far as clinically. She has a lot to offer clinically. So if you are looking for a female therapist, if you are speak Spanish and you are looking for a clinician who is speaks Spanish too, she is an amazing clinician. We support her. She is one of our sponsors. So, Ruben,
Let's get into the other sisters, addiction in the family. Ask you, what are some of the other roles that we know that take place?
yeah.
Far as you.
Well, I'm glad you asked because I got it pulled up right here. So you have we've already spoke about the addict. We spoke about the caretaker, which is also the enabler, right?
I like to use the word addict. I just don't, labels. And I'm not. That's what the good about a podcast. I'm not correcting you. That's the beauty of a podcast. We get along. We argue and stuff. But I hate to use the word addict labels. I don't know what's another word, but I just
Well,
hate the word. Like, are
I
you
hate
an
that
addict?
word
I just hate that.
addict too. I'm not saying that the person is the addict. This is just a role, just the name of the
Gotcha.
role.
Okay.
So I'm not
Okay.
saying that.
Okay.
I'm
You're
not
not
calling the
labeled.
person the
Gotcha.
addict
Okay.
itself. I hate labeling somebody as a addict.
Right.
Person with a substance use disorder is
Right. Right.
the one that I would typically choose, but specifically referring to the roles you have the
Sure.
I'm just naming the role here. No, I agree with you 1,000%. And that's the cool thing about having a podcast, right? Like we get to disagree and agree
Right.
and
Right.
everything else, and everybody gets to laugh at us and call us, whatever they want to call us. So, and then you have what is called the hero, typically who is the oldest or the eldest child, and the hero typically feels pressure to perform well to divert attention from the addiction. They are often considered or characterized as having a type A personality, being achievement oriented and competitive, which can lead to elevated stress or increased stress. Now, I think I can identify with that personally because I'm not saying I'm the eldest of all of my siblings and I freaking love
Okay.
them to death. They're amazing. Anybody knows it, Michael Odom, give him a shout out. He runs a construction business in Eastern North Carolina. Give him a shout out. If you know him, tell him I said, hey, uh, he's very good at, I got a story behind that, honestly, dead serious, how I know that I was meant to be in the clinical field or the healthcare field versus construction. But anyways, Mike's a great dude. I really love him. Much respect for him. My hat's off to him. But I can identify with the being achievement oriented and competitive. And right now, he and I both, and I don't know if he would agree. I think this is just me though. He and I both are kind of in that achievement oriented phase where we're both pushing to do so many things. And
Yes.
I think that goes back to some of our family too, or some of our family history, but that's neither here nor there.
And you fit that role because knowing you since 2019 which is good. You're an overachiever. I mean, you when I met you, you was getting your master's. Now you're working on getting your doctorate degree, and
Now,
yeah.
I do appreciate that, but now you got to remember though, okay, I took a ABD on that doctoral program. I'm fixing to start a new program here this summer, which is a dual MBA MA in philosophy through the University of Mary. That's about a year and a half program, roughly give or take. And then I'm going to turn around and do another doctoral program, and I'm going to jump in. I don't know which program I'm going to do just yet, but right now it's only the dual MBA MA in philosophy. Just a FYI, like I'm not done with school. Like I'm probably going to be in school till like 50. I'm sorry,
That's why
overeducated.
I say it's good to be young. Which when you're 34 years old, like something like that, because I always say
Listen, bro, hold on. You can't be using my government age up here, man. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
if if God came down and told me, Ruben, I'm gonna definitely grant you're 69. I'm gonna grant you another 20. At least you're gonna live to 100 and be in good health. I probably would go back to school and focus on even getting a master's or even further a doctorate. But
Sure.
at my age, I'm happy. Like I say, being a certified counselor and doing so much, and I love the opportunity of working in this field. Every place I've worked, I really enjoyed it and thought I was an asset. So, but yes, it's good to be young. Some people say you, no matter what age, you still go back. But I think at my age, I don't want to put that much attention. I'm focused on just enjoying the fruits of my labor.
Well, you should go back and get you a degree. I
Yeah.
can get you signed up in one of the programs I'm in. Are you you want to do the application today? Let's do it. We'll
No,
do it right here.
no.
And I'll just pick it with you. All right. So the next one is going to be the scapegoat. This is characterized as a person being treated as responsible for the dysfunction in the household and may develop depression or act rebelliously due to feeling ostracized and lonely. They are at a higher risk of succumbing to substance abuse later in life. We also have the mascot. Using humor as a defense mechanism, the mascot tries to alleviate the tension and discomfort caused by addiction. They may be seen as immature or naive, but they are often very sensitive. And then we have one of my favorite ones, the lost child. This person typically goes unnoticed and may actively try to avoid confrontation. They feel invisible in their own home and can experience issues with self-worth and expressing their needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you mentioned Claudia Black, and she's a therapist that's done a lot of work and with the family and how addiction impacts the family. And one thing she talks about, there's a golden rule in order to that goes within the family, and it's don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. And how that plays out, if one grows up in a family system where there's this dysfunction, you don't want to go to school and draw attention, or you don't want to talk about it. So when a child doesn't learn to talk about the problems, they ignore it. It's like the elephant in the living room. Everybody sees the elephant, but everybody just walks around the elephant. Everybody ignores the elephant. No one wants to talk about the elephant being there. And so if I can't talk about it, then my feelings are acknowledged. So I also learn not to trust as well. You know what I mean? And because if I acknowledge something and my family doesn't acknowledge it, I feel like, well, you know what? I can't trust my own instincts. And if I can't trust, I'm not allowed to don't talk, don't feel. My emotions, I don't develop that emotional maturity because, the whole dysfunction and the child isn't the focus. Like in a nuclear family or not beyond a nuclear family, whether it's a gay couple or whatever, and they have children, whatever it is, oftentimes the child is the focus of that relationship, making a strong family. But in addiction, you don't have that. You have, the person who's addicted. So everything focuses on them. So the child becomes lost. And then when I grew up, I don't have a relationship. I don't know how to trust. I don't trust my own feelings. So my emotional maturity is stunted. So a lot of things happen when there's addiction in the family.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think I think it's also important to understand the fact that these rules, right? Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, right? Don't just start and end with addiction, right?
No.
I've worked with many folks, young, especially the younger folks, 18, 19, 20s. And, they may have been, abused as a child, right?
Yes.
And so you get to working with them. And of course, when I typically meet with people that, especially of that age, I'm like, well, how come you never sought help? Like, because it's just an additional question that, uh, not every assessment might ask that, but I think it's helpful to, as a clinician or as a medical person, to ask that, like, how come you just never sought help over it? Or why have you? Typical responses I get fall into the don't talk, don't tell. Okay.
Right. Sure.
Don't trust, right? But mostly the don't talk rule. And so, and when they did try to reach out, there was ostracism. They were cast to the side. They were looked at as being the black sheep of the family, right? They were looked at on a number of things, a number of factors go into play, and these individuals struggled with whatever. And so the turned to substance use, or, when they used,
Sure.
they had the opportunity to use or drink or whatever, uh, you know, it made them feel right. It made them feel better about themselves because their freedom was taken at such a young age. And so that substance use is, uh, uh, a sort of new freedom for them, right?
Right. There's a
Helps them to
relationship,
escape
definitely.
fear,
Yeah.
right? And so when we look at things like that, like I want to emphasize that those three rules don't just start and end with addiction.
No,
Claudia
no.
Black is a phenomenal
Any
clinician.
kind of system where there's trauma, where there's domestic violence within the family, like whatever, any, not just necessarily addiction, any type of trauma, those roles develop to adapt to that trauma. And those are the golden rules that whether
Yeah.
across the spectrum, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, you know what I mean?
Yep. And
Definitely,
when
yeah.
that, no, and so I'm so shocked. I shouldn't say shocked. I think it's more so surprised, or not surprised. I don't know. Like, I think I'm saddened. Saddened. I think that's the word that fits. But I'm so saddened by the fact that you'll have somebody say, "Hey, they'll reach out to their guidance counselor, or to
Sure.
their, maybe to their aunt, their uncle, their grandma, whatever, right? They'll reach out and seeking help, and the family just, oh my God, no, 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 that didn't happen. If you don't shut up and sit down." And it's like, how come we ain't, and yeah, I get that there can be false accusations, right?
Sure.
I get that. And I'm not saying every report is 100% true and definitive without a shadow of a doubt. I'm not saying that by any means, because there's a lot of false reports out there. There are, right? But at least do an investigation, right? Do an investigation of some sort and find out. You know what I mean? Like, reality is so many people I've worked with, it's almost the same response, right? And it's a lot of it is an addiction, because nobody believed me. I was told not to talk about it, or they would harm me, or they would kill me, or they would kill my family, or harm my family in some way, shape, form, or fashion. It's the same or similar responses across the board there. And it's sad. It is sad. And it's like, really? Like,
One of the things when you do, I had opportunity, in my previous job to work with children, and one of the things with young children like 8, 9 years old is gaining their trust. So you don't sit down with a child of that age like you probably would with a person who's 20 something years old. Oftentimes we engage to develop their trust. We might engage in play therapy. Like I remember going outside playing catch with a young boy, and just get to know him and get him to develop trust. And over time, he would bring his. I remember he loved Pokemon, so he would bring his Pokemon cards in, and we play. He showed me how to play that. And over time, he would share things, about his family. And in the beginning, the family, because he was court ordered to come there. In the beginning, the family was resistant, and the mother and father wanted to know what he talked about. And I said, a lot of things are confidential, but he had a safe place. I like to know that he was 9 years old and he's probably 20 something. Now I like to see how that young man, how he's doing now. He had a safe place to talk, and that's important for a child. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, it's given that safe place
Yes.
for individuals to consult, to converse, to talk about, dude, I get, we as clinicians that work in the field like you and I, we're not the arbiter of any of those, reports or anything like that. And we don't determine what's true versus what's not true. And so you
Sure.
have the appropriate channels to go through. And it's up to them to go through and do whatever it is as far as their investigations are concerned. Definitely, I think it is a huge part of, you know, really, understanding how those three rules can play out, right? When we're told don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, at a young age, like, what does that set the stage for?
Mhm.
And it sets the stage for so many, uh, for so many things that we can't even you know, we can't even do a 10-minute podcast on it, right? A 10-minute segment on it. But because it's more than just, substance use. You're talking about
Right.
damaged relationships. You're talking about lack of trust in healthcare. You're talking about lack of trust in, you know, others. You're
Yeah.
talking about, domestic violence in relationships. You're talking like this is what these three rules set the
Yes.
stage for, right?
Yes.
Real quick, I want to talk about if you are needing a therapy in North Carolina, they do virtual and they do face to face. The place to heal with CR Suros. Again, the place to heal with Sierra, Soros. Hope
Yes.
I'm pronouncing her name right. I
Yes.
apologize.
Soros.
She is
Yes.
very, very great at what she does. I know I give all these, you know, I use all these big words, right, to describe somebody, but really and truly, she was on the podcast last week. She did an amazing job last week on when we spoke about mental health in the Black community. She is an an amazing clinician, a very humble clinician. That she not only sponsors this podcast, but she also hosts this podcast. So again, the place to heal in Sanford, North Carolina. Check them out. But yeah, getting back to what we were talking about, Ruben, the three rules, man. I just want to make it known that they don't just stop with
Substance use is why, right?
yeah, with substance use.
Any type of, I get that, any type of trauma, sometimes I get people who come into treatment, who at some point feel safe, and talk about like not only women, but young men talk about, and sexual abuse and what have you. And I know to talk about that, to share something that's so like that is, I said, we only as sick as our secrets to be comfortable to share those. That's where the healing starts to come in. It's a process, of course. You don't just share and say, I'm healed, of course, we know that, but that's where the healing starts taking place. That's why I always say I'm fortunate to have given an opportunity to work in this field. I really enjoy it, because there's so much work that needs to be done and so many people, like to come in the field, it is important.
Yeah. No, and there's you and I both. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work in the field. So many opportunities I've been given. You and I've been into community speaking. When I was at a place in Durham, our focus was on community and business relationships, and we built so many relationships with people, community. I mean, we were doing a lot of great things. And I think there's two ways to do community and business relationships. One is the focus of long-term relationships. That's what we were focused on. And then there's another one with basically using mental health and substance use as a sales pitch. And by using it as a sales pitch, you're not focused on long-term relationships as much as you are on immediate results right now. And I disagree with immediate results right now. I disagree with that approach. Yeah, sure. Can you build up 300 patients in, 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, or whatever your approach is, whatever your sales pitch is, yeah, absolutely. But there's so many things to, the field of addiction and, the approach that I'm glad that I've been able to take. And I think you're, right there beside me is looking at long-term relationships with other community providers and other agencies in the community. So I mean, I'm right there with you, man. I'm grateful to be a part of this field. And I think one of the things that I love being able to do in the field is being able to talk about the ways and how addiction impacts, or not just addiction but mental health impacts the families. So when we go back to the caretaker or the enabler, that reminds me of being almost like a codependent relationship, right? Like it kind of
What type of
reminds me of,
relationship?
yeah, a codependent relationship.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think it's a codependent relationship, but you might think differently. I don't know. I mean, when I look at the enabler and the caretaker, I also look at codependency too.
Right. A lot of times too, when clients or patients come into treatment, and they talk about their relationships and what have you. Oftentimes, those things that some consider dysfunctional are normal to them. Like far as those characteristics of codependency. Like trying to fix the person, what have you, and they think all the times patients think those they become normalized. Like trying to fix the person, not having your needs met, all those different things that become normalized in a relationship. So that's why I said oftentimes when they become adults, they have a hard time, and that's where they run into problems. And I think I oftentimes see this as well, that when two people meet and they were bonded, one of the biggest component for them bonding was their drug use or substance use, and then one of them gets used to work clean and sober, and they continue to do the work on themselves as far as recovery. I've heard oftentimes the spouse or the partner saying, you know what, I don't really like that person anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because now they're in recovery and they're learning and they're seeing, and they oftentimes I hear that a lot saying, I don't like that person anymore, and I know people work with family therapists, and I remember having the opportunity to work with a family therapist, and she was great, and she believed in the Minuchin approach. And one of the things she was telling me is the goal of family therapists not to fix them, and if they have children, to bring them together and walk out of the office and we love each other, but one of the things to learn how to co-parent and what have you, because oftentimes when a person is in recovery, especially if both are in recovery, the other person, they really, I always say it's hard to stay in a dysfunctional relationship when one person is in recovery and working on themselves. It would be a challenge to stay in a dysfunctional relationship with other person's using. That's why when people say, should I leave my spouse or my partner? I say, I can't make that decision. I can say that it would be a challenge to stay in a relationship like that because there's conflict going on now that you're becoming a healthier individual. You know what I mean?
No, no, and I think understanding codependency is very important because you know there could be things that we might not think is codependency, which it is, and then there are things that we automatically assume is codependency and is really not. And so, yeah, what is codependency though, right? Like let's
I'm not
look
going
at
to try to
a
define it.
true definition of what codependency is considered a condition that is characterized by excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner or another person, often leading to neglect of one's own needs and well-being. It can
Mhm.
involve low self-worth and difficulty setting boundaries, often stemming from past trauma, neglect, or substance use. Codependents may feel responsible for other people's feelings, thoughts, and actions and may struggle to maintain healthy, balanced relationships. Overcoming codependency involves setting boundaries, practicing self care, and seeking therapy to build self esteem. And so, that is what codependency is
Yeah.
defined as.
And the opposite of that, I'm sorry, the opposite of oftentimes I said codependence
You
is
just
having
love interrupting, don't you? You
yes.
just love interrupting. No, but go ahead, have the show, Mr. Ego.
Okay. Having what they call an interdependent relationship. That's the opposite. That's focused on a healthier relationship, being interdependent. There's nothing wrong with being dependent, but it's interdependence. You know what I'm saying? That you're working together, both of you are getting your needs met. You feel able to communicate and what have you, as opposed to just focusing on the codependent. But a lot of times people come into treatment and they think those behaviors again are normal because of their experience with their parents and whatever. So all those they think it's normal. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
go ahead. I won't. The rest of
No,
I won't talk anymore. The
no,
rest
I
of
love
it.
what you were sharing because you were actually sharing a lot on what I was actually thinking about. And so I just want to kind of, and I'm not going to say the same exact thing you said, but sometimes or a lot of times in recovery, right, from substance use, I find kind of it runs on a continuum, right? In order to, you know, get into recovery, I think it's, this is what I love about working with people, right? And this is what I love about, you and I, because we can both disagree and agree at the same
Right.
time. It's not,
Right.
and it's
Right.
cool. But, I look at recovery as coming from experience, right? Or experiences. And what do I mean by that is, Because how do we learn how to have a healthy relationship with people, right? It's through experience, right? How do we
Yes.
learn that it's okay for me to be able to go out to eat, right, on a Friday night at Texas Roadhouse or Chili's or whatever your favorite restaurant is, versus the only way I can go to a bar, right, is if I'm with somebody that I trust, and maybe there's, what's the motive for going? What's the reason for going, right? And so sometimes it is, or a lot of times it is learning through experience, right? Like we learn that what is a healthy relationship through experience. We learn what is not a healthy relationship through experience. You learn that, cocaine and substance use and, whatever else add to the list infinitum, right, is dangerous and destroys our life through experience, right? It's
Yes.
not that you can make me believe it, right? Or you can make the person believe it, because that's, now you're talking about the stage one and stage two of the 5 stages of change, or stage one, excuse me, which is and it's characterized by the inability to understand, right? That, I need to change or whatever, right? But it's through experience, through their direct personal experience, that they realize I need to change,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so I emphasize that word of experience because I think it really goes a long way in the mental health and substance use field. How do we know that, I need to be able to go and seek medical help when I need it? Through experience, right? Like I know that, you know, if you're struggling with withdrawals from alcohol or benzodiazepines, you're probably going to want to get medical help just
Right.
because those withdrawals are deadly. They're fatal, right? Now, I'm not saying you're going to die. No, 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 no. Do not take that. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying this it has the potential to be fatal as far as the withdrawals are concerned. But it's through experience that you know you need help. You see what I'm saying? It's through experience that you know that various clinical or medical interventions work. It's through experience that, and again, I can keep going, add to the list infinitum.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's a
Definitely.
good point.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm right. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I mean, think about it though, right? How do you know? How did you know? Did you ever smoke?
What?
Did you ever smoke cigarettes?
Sure.
Okay. How did you know that you needed to quit?
When the doctor, I started having bronchitis and different sorts like that, strap throat and
Okay.
all that. At some point, I knew that,
Okay.
I knew I had to quit. At
Okay.
some point, I
So,
knew I had to quit smoking cigarettes. Yeah.
well, the same thing with my brother and I, right? Like we decided, like we knew from our personal experiences, and I'm not going to talk on his, but we knew through personal experiences, right, that we needed to do things different in life, that we needed to live life differently, and so we both. But it took experience. It couldn't take you telling me, "Hey, Kev, just that." Another. How many patients have we worked with, dude? And I can tell you, countless, dude, hundreds,
Over
if not
100. Oh,
thousands,
yes.
that the resistance level is so high in the
Right.
beginning, but then 2, 3 months later, they're like, I'm willing. I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Right.
It's not because I did anything right.
Right.
I did exactly what you did, right? And what you talked about earlier, you offer a therapeutic environment and inviting environment. Excuse me, I'm
Safe
getting my
environment.
my inviting and environment mixed up, getting the tongue twister over here. But we offer a therapeutic, inviting environment.
And, research shows that regardless of education is important, all that for therapists, credentials, but they would say that the most important factor is, for example, how long a patient stays in treatment, remains in treatment. You have that retention is their relationship, not so much the therapeutic approach they use, is that therapeutic alliance with that patient, that bond the counselor has with that patient. That's the most significant component of helping that patient. You know what I'm saying? They said research shows that's definitely important. That relationship with that counselor. Oftentimes, patients come in with the transference or whatever, and those things can be healthy. Sometimes patients sees me as a father father figure because I am older, you know, and people might say, that's not healthy, but that could be healthy. You know, they, you model that behavior that you want that patient, you know, like talk therapy is important, but I always say setting boundaries and model that behavior for the patient as well. A lot of times patients come in, if with emotions, they think either I have to be aggressive or I have to be passive. And I try to help them learn, model. There's a way in between. There's a middle ground, which is being assertive, getting your needs met without being giving in or being passive or being aggressive. So you have to model a lot of that behavior, I think, as a therapist. They watch you, they see you, in how you interact with your coworkers, your staff, and all that. So that's important.
Yeah, no, I definitely, would agree with all that. Like, there's nothing I would disagree with what you said. And, and I think and this is going to be a whole a whole nother podcast on it.
Right. You
Trust
couldn't
me,
cover all that.
we're not even there yet, but you're talking about the quality of therapeutic relationships, the quality of healthcare services. And that is a huge piece that I think needs to be talked about more
Sure.
than what it is being talked about, or how it's being talked about today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. You can't possibly, like in a podcast, you can't possibly like an hour and cover it's so mental health, wellness, or substance use disorder is so broad and so entailed, like there's
Yeah.
so much. Oftentimes, what I would like to have is somebody out there in the audience who might want to come in and share their experience, of recovery, or either share the experience growing up in a family, where there's addiction, and share the experience. I think that's that will help people, the rest of the people in the audience. I say this podcast is a learning experience for me because I'm a counselor. Doesn't mean that I don't know it. I know everything. I'm still learning from the audience as well as learning from you, even Kevin. Yeah. So
No, and listen, if you are listening to us, whether it be on YouTube or what have you, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, what have you, go to our website, onemoment.chain.box. Okay, if you scroll down, you will see the link for the page for the One Moment podcast. You click on that, and you'll follow, and you'll see all of our social sites that we are currently on right now. We're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, we're on Facebook, we're even on Spotify, but we're not live on Spotify. So we go through at the end after we get through with the video editing, we upload to Spotify. So in the next coming weeks, we're going to be hopefully going live on Spotify too. But that's just going to be, in time. Look, want to take a moment and give a shout out or give a thanks to DNS and WebHash. Again, we're talking about powered by blockchain technology. Our website, onemoment.chain.box, we purchased the domain from 3DNS and we connected it to WebHash. And they are a Web3 platforms on the blockchain technology. If you purchase your domain from 3DNS and if you connect it to WebHash and purchase your websites and build your website on WebHash, all of your whole website will be in the form of NFT, also known as a non-fungible token. Okay. Again, DNS and WebHash. WebHash is the first organization to build websites on the blockchain. Okay. All of this is, again, Web3 organizations. Thank you.
yeah, we're getting ready to probably end the podcast right now, I guess.
Yeah, it's about that time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Got to be able to.
I smell dinner cooking, and I'm
Oh my
hungry.
gosh, whatever, dude. Whatever. Listen. Don't
Kevin
do
says I rushed the podcast,
Yeah,
but
you always be rushing, dude. Like you always be rushing, bro. Why don't you just kick back and relax and enjoy the moment?
next week
right?
I will. Next week,
One moment for a reason. Enjoy the moment, right?
I know.
Again, if you missed us in the beginning, we are named One Moment. Why? Because every single day we have 24 hours that are given to us.
Yes.
Within
Yes.
that 24 hours, there is 86,400 seconds, which means that we have many opportunities to make to make a decision.
And to enjoy life, definitely.
Yes, to enjoy life. And so in each of those moments that we are giving, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is our decision to be? That is the question I think we all have to ask, one moment at a time. Yes, I hate to be rude and say, or not rude, I'm not trying to sit there and say that everything comes from Eminem's hit song, Lose Yourself. But no, think about what he says.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, think about, and if you've never heard that song, go to YouTube, pull it up. Go to any, Apple Music, whatever, pull it up and go to listen to it. The very beginning is absolutely 100%, I do believe.
Yeah, Eminem could definitely flow. I give him, I'm into hip hop.
Listen, I'm a better rapper than he is, bro. You ain't never heard me
Yeah.
rap. You have never heard me rap.
Okay.
Oh, you had.
Okay. All right.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
Right.
kidding. I'm not a rapper, but no, seriously though, we are One Moment Podcast because 86,400 seconds in every single given 24 hours that we are blessed with.
And Kevin mentioned about I want at some point to develop a website, because in addition to being a certified substance abuse counselor, I also provide DWI. I'm a DWI provider within North Carolina, and like to get a website. Also, they call a SAP, as a substance abuse professional for the Department of Transportation. So that's people ask, what is that? So if you work for the DOT and you have an accident, for example, or your employer suspects substance use or whatever, they might ask you to provide a drug screen. If you test positive, then they will refer you to somebody like myself. Then at that point, I would do an assessment, a substance abuse assessment, and then determine the level of treatment that person needs in order to return back to work. So at that point, I couldn't provide the treatment because that's unethical. But what I could do is refer them to treatment and make sure that they complete the treatment. So when they come back to me, I write up an assessment and evaluation to their employer, and basically stating that they can go back to work. I'm on the website, what they call a clearinghouse website. It's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They have a clearinghouse. I'm listed there if you want to find me. And my name is Ruben Burney, and I'm, again, in the process of getting the website to get more into that area as well.
Now, I'm going to give you an exclusive sneak peek into next week's podcast. We're going to have Ms. Kim Martinez coming on. We're going to have Philip, a guy named Philip. He's a case manager and an amazing clinician and social worker. Both of these are actually therapists or social workers, whichever one you want to use. They're phenomenal. They have been practicing for a while. And so just to give you a sneak peek into next week's
podcast.
Podcast. I'm looking for it. Excuse me. I had a brain fart there for a moment. I am going to pull this up for you personally so you can all see this. If you are now, again, this is only a sneak peek, okay? We're going to be talking about it because it is very critical. All right? Oklahoma House Bill 1343, which was introduced by Representative Justin Humphrey, aims to abolish the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services and transfer all its duties, powers, and resources to the State Department of Corrections. The bill was first authored on February the 3rd, 2025, has since been referred to the Rules Committee for second reading. If passed, the bill would take effect on July the 1st, 2025, but it also includes an emergency clause which would make it effective immediately upon approval. Now, again, that's only a sneak peek. So, I'm not going to be talking about that because we don't have, listen, we're going to be having a case manager on site. We're going to be having a Miss Kim Martinez. She's going to be able to introduce herself. We're looking at a possible 2 to 2.5 hour podcast next week. Hospital.
Okay.
Because they have to introduce themselves. They have to talk about their background. We got to get through all of this stuff. We're going to have to talk about our sponsors and all of that. So listen, get your friends, get whoever you need to. Oklahoma House Bill, which that's going to be next week. Okay. Again, Oklahoma House Bill 1343. Check it out. That's next week's subject. We're going to be talking about it. It's very important we talk about it because if that goes through, I'm not even going to speculate because we can speculate all day. I'm not even going to speculate. So we're here not just as a mental health and wellness podcast, but we're also discuss legislation as it relates to, mental health field. So
Right.
we're kind of all around. If it's mental health related, we're going to talk about it. Doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
So anyways, listen, thank you all for chiming in with us. I am sincerely appreciate. You can't even do the heart symbol right. Come on, man. Look, I can't even do it right either. I ain't even going to try. Listen, please check us out again, onemoment.chain.box. That's the main website. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're on TikTok. We're not live on TikTok yet. I'm still trying to figure all that out, but we might only be able to do that every other week when we're in person because of how everything is. But it's neither here nor there. But check us out, onemoment.chain.box. Go down to our podcast website. All of our social media sites are up there. You're also able to see our sponsors and supporters.
And we appreciate, the audience and people, viewers listening, and subscribe and, take the journey with us. I think this is our 4th podcast, and we're learning 5th, and we're learning and growing. I'm becoming less and less nervous, and, so I appreciate the audience, and subscribe to us as well.
And subscribe to us on everything. We're on Instagram, Facebook, social media, listen to me, X, formerly known as Twitter, for those of you who don't know, YouTube, Instagram. All of our social media sites ain't on there, just so you know, but for the most part, they are. So please subscribe to us. Subscribe. Anyways, as always, peace and love.
Peace and love. Okay. All right.